Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, Anita Finley.
All right, everybody. I hope you're ready for this show because we have the goddess of Alzheimer's here who knows so much, so many people, has worked so hard in this field. Her name's Mary Barnes. She's the CEO of Alzheimer's Community Care. And Mary, I appreciate your time because I know every minute that you spend with your patients, and not your patients so much, but your organization, just makes an enormous difference. And we all applaud you.
How does a goddess talk?
Like you do talk. You're a goddess of Alzheimer's. That's right. You just talk. You know, you must feel so, I know you're probably still feeling you have so much work to do, but yet if you looked on a scale and where you've gone, you should be so proud of this.
Anita, you knew me way back when, like you say, I was running around screaming, there's a problem, and everybody said, well, the sky isn't falling, so it really isn't an issue. And I was dealing with a very uneducated, unknown, how shall I say, network, with the aging network. And nobody really understood what was going on around them. But it was just like a volcano. It was
let's
just
back
like
up.
rumbling.
Why did you? Who were you that you knew this and other people didn't? What's your credentials in this?
I've always been in gerontology. Even when I was working up in Connecticut, I used to work off a community college, which was as Nuntuk, and I had a very interesting position because the president of that college believed from the wound to the tomb. So we had little children running around, and he wanted all these senior citizens running around. And I'll tell you, we developed the University of the Third Age, and that was where you're talking about retirement. And we got a sister university there in Toulouse, France, and it was just all that very exciting, very involved population of our seniors. So I was kind of isolated. But then it was the social workers coming from the different communities, the towns, and we answered to 12 towns, and the social workers were coming and saying, Mary, there's something going on. They need help, but we can't give it to them because we don't know what they're asking for. And that kind of like got in my mind and was thinking about it. So when I moved down to Florida, I worked for a social service agency that I had never done before. I had never worked for a social service agency called at that time South County Neighborhood Center, later on to be called as the Volan Center. And I went in there because, you know, the kind of position I had up in Connecticut certainly wasn't available down here, but that's okay. I started being volunteer coordinator because that's how I originally started out in the system of aging. And there was we used to be calling people every day. There would be about 100 people that our volunteers would call, and they would write down certain things about after they talked to the person they were calling, like Francis, and said, Francis sounded, and then I'd see a little comment like, she sounded confused today. Or I had another comment, you know, Rose was so upset because somebody had left a baby on her doorstep. What do you mean a baby on her doorstep? And when you call the neighbor, oh no, Rose is talking funny again. Well, what does that mean? And then one night I happened to be working a little late, and I had heard that Grace wasn't doing too well, and I called her up that night, and I said, Grace, what's going on? And I heard a man in the back of her saying, who are you talking to? And I said, Grace, who's in there with you? She says, it's a policeman. And I says, what is the policeman doing there? And she says, I don't understand. He says, I robbed and I stole something. And I'm saying, Grace, let me talk to him. So I got the officer on the phone. It was out of Boca Raton, and he said, yeah. He said she stole some aspirins out of the drugstore, and the manager is pressing charges. I said, wait a minute, the woman has $500,000 in her checking account. Why would she do that? That's not right, you know. So I was able to, you know, she says, Mary, she says, I don't understand what he's talking about and everything. So I was able to talk to the manager of the drugstore, and he and all this was going on. It seemed all of it was coming to a head. A gentleman walked in my office. His name was Richard Akehouse, and he was sent there from Boca Raton Hospital. And he came down and he said, I was sent by Mrs. Nash. She was the head of the education department up there, and I'm looking for Mary Barnes. And I said, I'm Mary Barnes. Well, she says you can help me. And I says, well, what is it that you need help with? And he says, well, I want to start an organization for Alzheimer's. Anita, you know how once in your life or twice in your life a light bulb goes off the top of your head and something goes boom? And I said, oh, my God, that's what it is. not knowing anything, just understanding the dynamics of that disease. I said, oh, so I went to my boss at that time, and I said, we could do this as a volunteer opportunity. I mean, how much, put a phone in there. So Mr. Egghouse wrote a check to start that whole process, and I made it as a volunteer opportunity. So I had volunteers sitting next to me and answering the phone, because we put the phone number in the newspaper, and it never stopped ringing. It never stopped ringing. So it came to a point where I couldn't dance at 2 weddings. I couldn't have 2 gods. And so I said yes to the Alzheimer's cause. That's how I started.
And so where did the doctors come into this at that time? Did they realize what it was? And were they seeing patients with the same confusion? And
the families that had done their job, and we had, we have some very sophisticated caregivers and family members in that, and they were getting very frustrated with the doctors. They were getting very frustrated. We need something to communicate and to connect with the medical community, Mary. So that in this new organization that was being put together for Alzheimer's, said, well, what should we do now? Who talks to doctors? Well, nurses. So that was the very first family consultant was a nurse. And her name at that time, her name is now even Julie McDonald, and the caregivers loved her. They loved her. And so she was able to be the bridge with the doctors. And then a young man came in my office. His name was Mark Cornett, and he was from North Carolina, just fresh out of college. And he had been taught by one of my mentors that I always liked. Her name was Vera Guys, and she was a nurse, and she had developed this concept of daycare just for Alzheimer's. So I had met him up in a regional meeting for this organization and said, do you do daycare down there? He says, no, but I said, if there's a time that you ever came, this was in April, if there's ever a time that you would be interested in doing that, let me know. And I said, well, we'll talk about it. And I said, when you come down, we'll talk about it. Well, guess what? In August, he's on my front doorstep. I didn't have any money for a daycare, but for a month and a half, he worked for nothing because I didn't have any money for him. He developed the policy and procedures, and we found Advent Lutheran Church said yes. Ron Dingle, Pastor Ron Dingle. And he said, I'd like to try this because it sounds like something that's needed. So, and then we found another church up in Lake Park. And so they said, so we had 2 days down here, 2 days up there. And very quickly the caregiver said, we need more time. We need more time. So that's when we started the first original 2 daycares in Palm Beach County, which was one in Lake Park, 5 days a week. And then all donations, all private. There was no government money in this at all. It was all done by donations. And so that's how it all started.
Okay, but let's go back to the research. Let's go back to the pharmaceutical companies. Then nobody, because Aricept wasn't probably even around at that time. No one even knew anything.
You're talking back in 1988,
right,
1989.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And so they just assumed people would just have this and then they would just forget more and more, and that was it.
At that time, the National Alzheimer's Association, it was at that time they were known as Alzheimer's Disease and Related Disorders, ADRDA. And this is who this new organization was a part of. They were starting to spread the word. And the reason why that organization was started was easing the burden, finding the cure. So the local people like us were supposed to ease the burden, and the national organization was going to find the cure. But after a while, we got so successful at what we were doing. As far as the
right. We had a lot of donations and
so then there was a concern about needing more money, and you can't do both. You can't do the services and you can't take money off. So this is when around 1996, 1997 is when Alzheimer's Community Care was born.
And tell us about the man who gave you all that money, because I don't know much about him.
Mr. Baxter, Don Baxter. He was a very visionary man, and I first met him in 1992. And he wanted to do real services. And what we started out with even then was going out to Pahokee. And we needed to do something out there. And we were working with the Department of Elder Affairs, the first secretary, actually, And we were talking about having these daycares, and so he gave a big donation, and he said for 3 years. This donation went over a period of 3 years, and we started the Pahokee, Pahokee program.
Why Pahokee?
Because we were trying to do something out there in the real rural community, and that was what the state was working with too. So we were able to come up with the matching cash for the state, and they were able to get a federal grant of $500,000. So our little 80,000 was able to help the department, but that's how we started this whole project. And there was another very wonderful, legislator, and Sue Jacobs, and she was the one who got the dollars from the state. This is how we first started out. And so when the need for getting another organization and the two worked together, and as far as Alzheimer's Community Care, started out. And so then everybody needed more services. And that's when the big switch, that's when I decided I needed to work for that organization. And Don Baxter, built a building in honor and memory of Mr. C. Kenneth Baxter, because he's the one who had the Alzheimer's, died with it. And so we went into 800 North Point Parkway. That's our headquarters, and we stay there for $1 a year. And we do pay a CAM, but when you've got your headquarters and you've got your main office, and you don't have to worry about, and we had a 20-year lease, which, by the way, next year we're just going to be up. We'll be in existence 20 years, but that's okay. We got another lease coming.
That's good.
For another 20 years.
That's
but
excellent.
Anyway, it's been but now it is so understood. This disease. And the issue is it's taken a little while for everybody to understand, because we do have an epidemic now. And Florida, we have 10% of the national population that has Alzheimer's right here in Florida.
So if people are listening, I just want you to know, because you would probably like to get involved or in some way, let me give you the office number. It's 561-683-2700. That's 561-683-2700. You're listening to Mary Barnes, who's the CEO of Alzheimer's Community Care, and I'm Anita Finley, and we're here to make a difference. We always try to do that with our radio shows, and we try to get the very best people who can open up your eyes, the windows of education and learning. You know, one thing, I want to just take you back a minute. People never knew that someone had exactly Alzheimer's. They said, we can't tell. Remember, when they die, we're going to examine their brain,
senile,
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
so that's another major breakthrough. Well, now they know.
If you went into the Webster's dictionary at that time, they would talk about somebody confused and old. That's senility. That's exactly. There was not a medical term, and so we were very aggressive and talking to the doctors and saying, you've got to tell families that they have a disease, and it's irreversible, it's neurological, and you're going to die from it. And but now we've come to the point as an organization, our latest big development in our organization is our education and training department. We've actually got a department now, and we have a very talented professional. Her name is Karen Gilbert. She's been in nursing for her whole career. And she's very talented, very knowledgeable about the whole human condition. And everything she's ever done in all her work and all the years that she's been in different, like being in the cardiac unit in St. Mary's and running her own home health agency and everything she's ever done has really brought her to us. And she's just blossoming. And I'll tell you, it's hard to keep up with her. We also have another great nurse. Her name is Christina Dickoff. Her name, we call her Tina, and she's another very talented, and she runs our CCS department. And that we now have the bracelets, the transmitters. We now have the family nurse consultants. We have about 8 of them now throughout the 3 counties that we serve, and we're going to be opening up our 11th specialized daycare.
I can't 11.
Throughout 11.
I can't believe
throughout the 3 counties. And it's very exciting, but the nurses one this is all Karen's idea, and she approached, and she's very respected in her field, and she went ahead, and we've got we're going to be doing this nursing rotation. She started it, where the nurses who are going through their practicum, and this gives them real good education in the daycares, the exposure, understanding what is the different interventions, of what makes us so successful, because of the we're able to understand because of the testing that we're able to provide for the cognition, the BIMS test, and we're tracking that. And we have patients that are very active, that are very, very sustaining their lifestyle because of the routine that we're able to develop 5 days a week. And their scores, you would find them in a nursing home if they weren't doing what they were doing every day. And we have one patient that's got a score 2, which is very severe, but she's able to eat, she's able to get up, she helps herself get dressed, and everything because of the routine. And because of the kind of interactions that she has socially, she's not isolated, she's not lonely, there's not that depression going on, and she doesn't have an empty day. And that's the big issue. See, and I even hate to call it daycare, because it's more than that. It's a way of life. You know, we all have, when we have different diseases, we all have to change our way of life. We have to adapt to what that chronic disease is.
It's called quality care, right?
Right. And but people want the loved ones to be at home.
Yeah.
They don't want them to languish in a nursing home for years and years and years. And so this has been the alternative. But we also have 2 nurses on the floor. All those 10 hours that we open, there's 2 nurses on that floor.
So is this a beta site? Is this a role model for the rest of the country?
We've been told that.
I hope so.
We've been
you
told
deserve that.
We just got a grant from the federal government, the first one we've ever gone for, the first one we ever got, and we're a part of 10 other projects that they have funded, and one of the things they want to come up with is to come up with this model. Okay, so we're at the table.
Oh,
we're at the table. We're so excited.
You should be.
Yes, the money's important, of course, the money, but it's the opportunity.
Yes. Yeah,
that's really the way we believe that the dignity and the way we believe that families should be really served. You know, they all say patient-centered. We can't say patient-centered. We got to say family-centered. This is what drives us, because we have 2 people we have to worry about. And so being able to have both, like the family nurse consultant takes care of the caregiver and deals with the daycares deal with the patient and keeping them on a sustainable and a quality track. And you can have patients for 2 to 20 years. They have the average being 10. And then we have such a mixed culture today. You know, Hispanics, they can exhibit Alzheimer's 5 to 8 years sooner than Caucasian.
Why is
so
that?
So you have a very robust.
Wait, why is that?
Well, part of it is they're thinking about their lifestyle. They're thinking that maybe there's ways that we can change this around because we're changing the lifestyle of eating and different other types of, So
the ethnicity does play an important part, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to run out of time, before I want to tell you something that when I went to the wonderful conference that you had with this sold-out crowd, I had the privilege of hearing Dr. David Watson.
Mm-hmm.
And I was blown away by him. And so nothing would do but that I got him to be on the radio show, because his clinical work came through, I think it came through a major pharmaceutical company, Accurian, or someone contacted me, and we did some advertising, and then they wanted to have a spokesperson, and they said David Watson, and he was on the show, he said, right where you are now. And at first, he hadn't done this with me and didn't know, but when it was over, I was spellbound. Mm-hmm. He was happy.
Yeah.
And I am...
He's very articulate.
Well, but he could be the answer to a lot of the things, the research that he's doing.
You know who he was a protege of Dr. Eisner.
I didn't
Larry
know.
Eisner.
Oh, really?
Yes,
okay.
yes. And when somebody says, I've been around for a long time, blah, 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 then he'll say, well, you must know Larry Eisner. And they'll say, well, no, not really. Then, of course, like David had told me, he says, well, then they haven't been around. They don't know Dr. Larry Eisner. So he said that to me. I says, absolutely. I talked Larry into coming up here from Miami. Because Baumel Eisner, remember that?
Yes.
Okay, way back then. And they were the first real community-based researchers down there. And I talked to Larry, and I said, Larry, you got to come up here. And he came to Boca, and that's where he opened up. And that's, yeah.
I
don't often talk about that.
Yeah, but it's
and
good
I don't
that
often
you do.
brag about that.
But you should.
Larry is good.
Okay,
Larry
and
was good.
He's really. But now, so here's. I told Dr. Watson, I hope you'll be ready for a Nobel Prize. I said, because what you're doing is the most I've heard from anybody. And he said he'll take anybody from minimal, from even just a memory loss, the minor that they don't know, all the way to people who. I mean, he is really one go-getter.
Well, there's a lot of research and a lot of opportunity out there at this point because everybody's desperate to find something that is going to slow up the disease. I mean, they're not even really talking a cure at this point. They're trying to slow it up. And they were on this one track with if they could clean up the plaques, if they could clean up the tangles, that they would be able to slow it up. Didn't work. They thought it would. And everybody, when they pulled the plug on this one study that was going on, because they were it was infusion, and the brain sort of got sometimes at one point got inflamed and stuff, but there was some positive properties that was moving forward, and so but when they pulled the plug, it was devastating, and that was about a few years ago. Now they're on another track, and NIH is funding a very big study, which is going to go on 20 years, and they're trying to get people they want to give this medication through a study earlier, before you even show the signs, before you even actually are able to see it. And so we're hoping that, because they were giving this medication when you were actually so infected by the Alzheimer's, because by the time you see it, and the behavior, there's already a lot of brain damage. So I don't know. Right now they're calling it early onset. It's not early onset. With all the research and everything, they're going to come up with different terminologies, which is going to be very good. And where the rubber meets the road, we're waiting for these types of medications and whatever. But until that's needed, until that's actually successful, as one caregiver said, Mary, Alzheimer's Community Care is the only real medication that really works.
And what other states have someone like you? I mean, do you know anybody else where, I know, and you have great contacts all over the country. Is there some other organization?
Not as comprehensive as we are.
Not as comprehensive.
And even the legislators, when we go up there and talk about what it is and of course we have the numbers. We have the documentation to prove what we're doing and what we've done. And so they say, I want it in my bag. Why isn't it over here? And I said, well, in time, I'm sure this project that we're working with the federal government, and just like they did, you got to put it on the same scale as hospice. When hospice was first put together back in the 70s.
That's a good point.
You've got to have an organization that's in the community that has certain services that are going to be able to make sure that families get this kind of help. So what should those services be? Well, we happen to believe in our core services. We have our wraparound services. So what I'm hoping will come out of this is that there'll be this model that the government will see and which way, because Newt Gingrich, when they did the Alzheimer's Study Group report, and we were there, Mr. Butcher spoke in back of, and he followed Maria Shriver, believe it or not. And there was, when they rolled out this policy to the U.S. Senate Special Committee on Aging, and that was March 25th, 2008. And so this model, this policy's out there, but it takes a little while for government to move, and this may be one of the ways of moving it forward by this 3-year project that we're working on.
Talk to me about President Reagan. I mean, have you ever investigated how long did he really have Alzheimer's, and what was being done for him? It's such a mystery.
I think that nobody really understood what was going on with him, but I got to tell you, I was running around Boca saying, he's got Alzheimer's.
Is that right?
Oh, because of the fact that this is the second time he was running now, and when he was on script, he was okay. But then when he would become off script is when he would come out with these different stories that the reporters, if you remember the next day, they'd say, we did that we searched out that story that President Reagan talked about. We couldn't find anybody or anything, and so then somebody would come out and say, well, he's a great, he's a great kidder, and and blah blah. They would, how shall I say, diminish.
They
would
do that for people with Alzheimer's. They themselves know how to do that.
Well, what was so amazing about the president, and you're talking Charlton Heston too. You're talking Otto Preminger. You're talking. These are people that use their brain for memory. I mean, how much more of a powerful muscle could you have? And he was very, very smart. Okay, I mean, Ronald Reagan was a very smart man, and to have this disease creep into his life, especially, and he was a prolific writer. I mean, he loved writing, and so it isn't like you don't lose it. If you don't use it, you're going to lose it. That wasn't his problem. I mean, he was using it all every day, and he had a great sense of humor, great wit. And so to have this come into his life, and all these other theories are saying, well, if you use it, it's not. If it's predisposed, if it's in your DNA, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. And this is where, and our brains are wired a certain way. So this is the big mystery. This is the big challenge of finding. Are we going to have a cure? I don't feel we're going to have a magic bullet. I think there's going to be, just like with cancer, there's going to be remember when John Wayne went in and shoot us and he said to Jimmy Stewart, Doc, what have I got? He says, you got the cancer. Didn't say you had lung cancer. Didn't say you had pancreatic cancer. Didn't say that. You had and that was in those days. It was just the cancer. This is what they're saying about Alzheimer's. You got Alzheimer's. And so everything has been thrown under that. But now you're hearing new terminology, neurocognitive disorders, and that, and this is going to be the new umbrella word, neurocognitive disorders, and I like it very much.
Oh, that's a very good word.
And it is a very good word, because Alzheimer's, and you've got Lewy body's disease, and you've got vascular dementia, and you've got others too, and you're going to have more labels in time.
And we're going to have more of you, Mary Barnes, because I love having you talk. If not people know what you're doing or what's going on there, I appreciate it so much. Everybody, phone number to call for more information, brochures, how you can volunteer, how you can donate. It's 561-683-2700. Pencil Talk Radio, get your pencils, 561-683-2700. Thank you, and I'll be at your next symposium.
You got to be there.
I will be.
We're having some very interesting presenters.